So I've had several questions about, self-builds and wiring about the PiPhone. So I decided to do a teardown, so we can have a look and see in a bit more detail, maybe have a look at the wiring and so on. So we'll just start by taking off the PiTFT. So what that reveals is PiTFT and the lithium polymer battery connected into, so the battery, once it leaves the DC to DC converter, goes straight into the GPIO of the TFT, which then in turn goes down to the Raspberry Pi. So it's fed into 5 volt and ground here on the GPIO, and that's what powers the Raspberry Pi. And on the way down it also powers the PiTFT. So if I take this apart, take this out here, that's actually the UART, which has ground, 5 volts, TX and RX, and that's what we use to talk to the GSM modem. So I'll just go ahead and snip. So that should allow us to take off so just zip ties, and that should allow us to take out the GSM modem. So this is basically, it has the SIM card, which allows us to make calls or associate with the local provider. Audio out, which is pink, it's usually green, and audio in, which is usually pink, but the audio in is usually green, the audio out is usually, anyway, you know what I mean, I did the wrong way around. So that's what basically the unit that allows us to talk to the GSM or to the cellular network. So if I put that over to one side, I'll just snip the next part, which is where the power. Alright, so once that's done, that's just a little separator between the Raspberry Pi and all the rest of the units, and that reveals our Raspberry Pi. Here you can see I've used a micro SD card and an adapter, which gives us a nicer finish. When we push it in, it's flush to the edge, so it just means it's not sticking out as much. Actually, I must do the same with this, because this sticks up from the back of the PiPhone. I think I'll take off those headers and just solder the wires in here from this side, but I wanted to keep the soldering to a minimum. So that's the Raspberry Pi with the micro SD card adapter. So I shall leave that over there, as you guys can see it. So we'll get into the power unit, the PiTFT. Basically it's powered into ground here, and plus 5 volts there. So if I take that off, I can leave this over here. Then we're left with the LiPo battery. Now, so all of these guys are just off the shelf. LiPo battery off the shelf. DC to DC converter and switch. DC to DC was got from eBay, and the switch is just a normal switch on off. I'll just reveal what's underneath there. Bit of sticky tape, insulating tape. So basically the plus, let me just snip this as well. I hope I have enough of these to go back together, but anyway. So what we have is the lithium polymer battery goes into my DC to DC, so plus minus. Then we have, if we look at the circuit, so that's it. So we have the plus and minus going in here. We have the output 5 volts. Ground goes all the way to the Raspberry Pi, no interruption. And the plus rail is broken by the switch. And that goes into the 5 volts on the other components. So when we switch it on, the 5 volt is connected all the way through. When we switch it off, the 5 volt is broken and we've no power to the other components. So I don't know what more I can say really. Lithium polymer separator. And a few tie wraps, and just when I'm going to put it back together, just going to fuse a few tie wraps and put it all back together. So build time, I don't know, approximately 20 minutes. Okay, I hope that answers some questions. So the only bit, okay, some of the reports on the web said there's no soldering required, a tiny little bit of soldering, you know, a couple of wires, DC to DC, 2 wires in here to connect the lithium polymer, and an output into a switch. The connectors can be got if you don't want to. I happen to have a crimp tool which will actually make those, but you could actually use a cable similar to this guy and just strip it apart. You can get jumper cables in many electronic stores with these DuPont connectors on either end, so jumper, female to female jumper, and you could actually just, you know, use jumpers to go from these guys or strip it off and solder it and have this go into the header pins. So that would save you the crimp tools. That's just an extra connector I put in. There's no need really for that. So hopefully that answers some questions, and enjoy. If you build it, take some pictures, call me with it. Okay, thanks a lot.